So first of all, warm welcome to this webinar with Libraries Connected, ASCEL and the Reading Agency this afternoon. I'm Sarah Mears, I'm Programme Manager at Libraries Connected. Really pleased to be joined by Lucy Banks, a colleague from ASCEL, and then Debbie Hicks, Karina Spalding, and two Emmas from the Reading Agency and another Emma from Libraries Connected. So Emma Daniel will be kind of keeping up control of the tech, and the two Emmas, Emma B and Emma F from the Reading Agency, will be speaking this afternoon. Just a little bit of housekeeping for you, as usual. If you could keep your mics off during the presentations, but we will be filming, or we are filming the webinar. So if you want to not be on camera, that's fine to turn your camera off. But if you don't mind keeping it on, I think it's always nice to have for people to, when they're speaking, to see faces when you're talking. And please do put any questions in the chat as we go through this afternoon's webinar. We're leaving 15 minutes or so at the end just for a question and answer session, which Lucy will be chairing. So any questions or any thoughts, any reflections that you want to share, please do put them in the chat as we go. I think we're really excited to be having this webinar with our colleagues at the Reading Agency, because they've been working with library services on this really interesting cross-authority summer reading challenge pilot for some time now, and really want to move it on from being a pilot to being just an embedded part of the summer reading challenge. So we thought it was a really good opportunity to share good practice, share ideas, and share what's been going on, and to hopefully inspire more of you to take part in this way. So I'm going to hand over to Debbie to introduce the pilot scheme.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and welcome everybody, and thanks for coming along today to hear more about the impact, as Sarah says, of the work we've been doing over the last 3 years, in fact, to test out a new cross-authority delivery model for the Reading Agency. For the Summer Reading Challenge. The Reading Agency is really proud of the work it does with you, our public library partners, to bring summer reading activity to children. We all know that the Summer Reading Challenge works as a quality assured national reading for pleasure programme that's owned and delivered locally by public libraries, with a strong evidence base to prove its value in building reading language and confidence, in connecting children and families, and improving well-being through fun reading activity during the summer holidays. At around £1 a child and reaching approximately 700,000 children annually, the value and cost efficiencies of the Summer Reading Challenge are proven. It's a relatively low-cost, high-impact library intervention that's really helping to create confident and inspired young readers, whilst also tackling that summer reading slide between spring and autumn term, between the summer and the autumn term, and delivering some very key cultural and educational priorities. But we also know that the potential reach and impact of the challenge is much greater than that which library budgets alone can sustain, and that many of the children and families who really need the benefits of reading the most may not be existing library users or engaging with the challenge. And we also know that the impact of the Summer Reading Challenge on reading skills and confidence is needed now more than ever to tackle inequalities that have been amplified by the pandemic and then embedded by the subsequent cost of living crisis. Which is why we have been working with library partners over the past 3 years to pilot this new cross-authority approach to Summer Reading Challenge delivery that's still driven by the library service, but it's working with and through partnerships that have provided additional resource to help extend reach and widen engagement by targeting inequality and need. So 3 years of piloting this model with 39 library authorities, working with education, children's services, early years, public health, HAF and other providers has delivered some really impressive results, and we're looking forward to sharing the impact of this work here with you today, and also, as Sarah says, working with you to embed the learning into the future of Summer Reading Challenge delivery. The library authorities involved have all been very different, encompassing city and borough, unitary and county, rural and coastal. And we're going to hear from two of those authorities today. But they have all been able to flex the model to meet local need and lever in new investments and partnerships. Cross-authority partnership working has really helped to build more happy and confident young readers ready to go back to school in the autumn. It's also helped to address that attainment gap and level up opportunity for those that need the benefits of reading the most. This way of working has seen over 500,000 starters in pilot areas, many of whom are engaging with the Summer Reading Challenge and public libraries for the first time. Last year, 30% of the starters in pilot areas were new library members, compared with just 20% of starters in non-pilot areas. The pilots also tested different approaches, offering universal access to the programme for all primary age children in some places, or interventions targeted by year group or priority place in others. And it has tested the impact of removing barriers to engagement through universal library membership models that ensure data sharing compliance with GDPR requirements through opt-out or legitimate interest approaches. Universal library membership, which we're going to hear a little bit more about today, has created new library users and generated a real buzz for those children receiving their first library card. And it's also given rise to lots of learning about process and how to work within local interpretations of GDPR legislation. Given the recent library review's focus on the very real benefits of expanded library membership, I think this is going to be really important learning for the future, whichever government is in power. So over 3 years, we've worked with 1 in 5 English library authorities to stretch ambitions around Summer Reading Challenge delivery. It's been really exciting to see what can be achieved by working together to deliver shared priorities through reading and public libraries. And it's even more exciting to think about how we can reach more children with that ultimate ambition of delivering universal Summer Reading Challenge opportunities that will give everyone an equal start on their reading journey. So that's it from me for the introduction and sort of framing of this webinar. I'm now going to hand you over to Dr. Karina Spalding, Head of Research and Evaluation at the Reading Agency, who's going to give us a data snapshot of the difference this new way of working can make. Thank you, Karina.
Thank you, Debbie. Just get my slides going here. We, of course, evaluate the reach and impact of our work every year, and we evaluated each year of this pilot individually, as we do for the Summer Reading Challenge every year. But a key goal of ours through this process was to be able to bring all of our data together around this new method of strategic delivery, building a comprehensive picture of reach and impact over the course of that whole 3-year pilot. So I'll start with some brief context around methodology here, so how we went about what we did. But generous funding from Arts Council England allowed us to commission an independent evaluation agency to research the first 2 years of the pilot. As part of that work, our independent evaluators developed a robust, sustainable evaluation framework for us to use to evaluate year 3 and beyond. While this framework covers a range of key aims and outcomes, I'll be focusing today on those related to exploring the value of the pilot in reaching new audiences and shaping a picture of the longer-term impact of this method of working. So over the 3 years, we've taken a mixed methods evaluation, meaning that we've collected quantitative reach and impact data through program monitoring and surveys, as well as qualitative data through depth interviews, focus groups, and case studies. So what we've done there is really bring together both numbers and stories to draw out the nuances of the impact of this approach. To give a brief sense of scale, the data feeding into these findings we'll be discussing today includes annual program monitoring data across 192 library authorities, and we use that data for benchmarking and comparing the pilot against a control group. We also did a baseline and endline pupil survey that was completed by more than 3,800 pupils. We conducted a school survey completed by staff at 43 schools taking part in the pilot, and a family survey that was completed by more than 300 parents and caregivers in those pilot areas. That was coupled together with over 70 interviews with library staff and other local authority stakeholders, in-depth case studies in 12 library authorities, as well as focus groups, workshops, and interviews with children and families in 16 primary schools, helping to ensure that families' voices were also positioned at the forefront of our findings. So what did we find? Well, as part of this work, Arts Council England funded impact research in that first year, showed a statistically significant impact for children who took part in the Summer Reading Challenge. So this is outside of the pilot. This is just for the Summer Reading Challenge in general. And that means a scientifically proven positive difference for those who take part. Children who took part in the challenge read more over the summer, enjoyed reading more, and felt more confident reading compared to those who did not take part. Children also improved their well-being, feeling braver, calmer, and better able to manage their negative emotions. However, that was just one part of the research we conducted. Using the same evaluation framework over the 3 years has allowed us an important opportunity to track change across time, identifying and measuring trends resulting from the new model. What we saw over the 3 years of the pilot were a set of clear, consistent themes. Firstly, a clear message of increased participation across pilot authorities. And secondly, when we mined those increases, we found that they were largely driven by underrepresented audiences, such as boys and children experiencing disadvantage, as well as children experiencing barriers to library use. And those increases went hand in hand with even greater increases in new library membership. We also identified some real benefits for raising the profile of the library across the local authority, especially what the library could achieve in terms of education and health. So looking at the data in more detail, as Debbie mentioned, 39 library authorities in total, that's 1 in 5 library authorities, delivered the pilot model in some form across the 3 years. However, when we look at the number of library branches, that equates to actually about 1 in 6 of participating library branches. When looking at that in detail, our evaluation data shows that those library services, the pilot library services, overperformed comparatively. So for example, between 21 and 23, on average, almost 1 in 3 summer reading challenge starters was in a pilot area, meaning that pilots reach more children on average proportionally per library branch than our control group, and the control group being library authorities offering that traditional model of delivery. 2 in 5 new library members came from pilot areas, while data over time shows that many pilots saw the largest increase in the first year of their pilot delivery, new membership rates then became stable over time, so they went up and then became stable at that higher point, demonstrating that pilot authorities are continuing to reach and engage new families, even in areas where universal enrollment or automatic library membership has been tested. The data also showed that over 1 in 5 completers was in a pilot area, showing us that the children and the pilots were completing the challenge at a slightly higher rate than as can be expected proportionally, compared with areas where parents and caregivers need to take that extra step to bring their child up to the program. That indicates that when access to a library-based reading activity like the challenge is provided universally to children within a defined area, so without stigma, anybody can access it, it's given to them rather than needing to take that extra step, we see those barriers to extracurricular summer reading are reduced. And encouragingly, regardless of whether children completed their challenge, the data indicates that they're reading more as a cohort in those non-pilot areas than those in those non-pilot areas. The number of book issues in pilot areas has increased year on year and now makes up to a quarter of book loans across all libraries delivering the challenge. And encouragingly, we see that those trends in library use are also continuing outside the summer holidays. So for example, data from one library authority showed that the percentage of children borrowing a book continued growing after the challenge completed. And so they saw an increase of 20% in the number of children who'd borrowed books during the challenge as compared with 6 months later. So just to look at this graph in a little bit more detail, where we see those increases or where we see the pilot authority performing at that higher level is we would expect to see sort of where that 14% level is staying consistent across that proportion, staying consistent. But as you can see here, that starters, completers, new library members, and book issues is higher on all of those points within the pilot as compared to traditional delivery. So in addition to those high rates of engagement across the pilot more generally, the evidence we've captured shows that this method of delivery successfully engages underrepresented groups, which was a core aim of our delivery of that pilot and development. Our data shows that the model reaches new audiences at a rate 50% higher than through library authorities offering traditional delivery. So as Debbie noted, 3 in 10 starters in pilot areas became new library members compared to 2 in 10 across library authorities outside of the pilots. Those new audiences include children living with disadvantage and those who haven't accessed the library service before due to a range of barriers. These findings are also reinforced by our school survey, with 60% of schools agreeing that the pilot approach reached pupils living with disadvantage and 60% that it had engaged pupils who had not taken part in the past. Also making up part of these new audiences was greater participation by boys, who national and international research shows tend to engage in reading and library use at a lower rate than girls. Our data shows that the pilot model successfully narrowed the gender gap by about 5%. So 46% boys and 53% girls took part in pilot areas over the 3 years, which is a 6 percentage point difference, compared with 44% boys and 55% girls through traditional delivery, and that's an 11 percentage point difference. So while the summer reading challenge as a whole, no matter what your type of delivery is, has consistently engaged boys in reading at a higher rate than the national average, the data shows that this method of strategic partnerships successfully boosts that rate even further. In addition to the impact we've recorded in reach and engagement, we spoke with libraries, families, and stakeholders, local authority stakeholders over the 3 years who shared stories with us about the other forms of impact that the models had. These include a raised profile for the library service across their local authorities, and going hand in hand with that with greater recognition of what the library service can deliver, as well as a raised awareness on the part of wider council services, Debbie mentioned, children's and family services, public health, and others, in just how to access those library-delivered activities to help achieve their own priorities. So, for example, local authority stakeholders such as HAF providers and schools told our researchers about the way that the challenge and local library help them to deliver against goals such as supporting children's well-being or the objectives set out in the DFE reading framework. To explore the example of HAF partnerships in more detail, in some pilot areas, library services created an opportunity for children to participate in the challenge as part of their HAF provision. That involved offering spaces for reading, which served as a break from the more active sessions that were offered as part of the provision. And both libraries and HAF providers identified several benefits to this approach. So firstly, and primarily, meeting children experiencing disadvantage where they are and engaging them in that familiar setting, offering them activities which complemented existing HAF provision, as well as meeting HAF literacy requirements, for example, those required by children's services. As a library representative explained, quote, I think for them, they saw, well, we've got this literacy element, and here's a way we can introduce it. We kind of had a shared goal. HAF providers echoed those library views as well, saying, quote, it tied in absolutely perfectly to what we do as a HAF program. We thought, well, this is brilliant because it ties in really nicely to our English on the Move initiative. It was actually a chance for children to then sit and read some books. We used it as kind of a downtime. Libraries also commented on the importance of children encountering new reading role models through this method. For example, seeing their leisure center coaches handle books, read aloud, and start conversations about books and reading. For the reluctant and less confident readers especially, this opened a door for major changes, with some reading a book for their very first book over the summer period as a result. And that echoes recent Open University research positioning responsive adult involvement as a core mediator for encouraging children's reading for pleasure. So that was just a brief overview of our key findings over those 3 years, but the data confidently demonstrates that the reach and impact of the challenge can be amplified through this model of working. The model successfully reduces barriers and raises access through new partnerships and a more prominent library service. It supports council services to work more closely across the local authority in a joined-up way, reducing those silos to help level up opportunity for children and families across the UK, and especially those most in need of the benefits of reading. We've got a full version of the evaluation report tracking that 3-year impact available on our website, as well as summary reports and full reports for each individual year. But I'm now really delighted to introduce our case studies. We have representatives from 2 of the pilot libraries here today to share their experiences. So first will be Caroline Ray. Caroline is Libraries and Community Assets Manager and Resident Engagement and Participation for the London Borough of Newham. And Newham took part in our pilot across all of 3 of those years. And following that will be Emma Fisher, who is Children, Young People and Families Librarian for South Gloucestershire Libraries. And South Gloucestershire took part in the pilot in 22 and 23. So with that, I will pass over to you, Caroline.
Thanks for that. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen, everyone. Hopefully. Okay, we're good? Okay, so I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of Newham's journey over the last 3 years. So to begin with, very, very quick kind of overview of Newham. Lots of people don't know where it is. We're a London borough on the east of London. You can see with the little pink blob on the map. But we are a really deprived borough. So we have about 350,000 residents, and population's growing quite quickly. About a quarter of households are amongst the most deprived in the UK, and we have more than 44% of children living in poverty. And 21% of jobs low paid, with a reasonable percentage of people who are paid under minimum wage. And we have 6,500 families living in temporary accommodation, which is about 3 times what it was 5 or 6 years ago. And again, it is one of those unfortunate statistics that is increasing quite rapidly. But part of this, what we know, is that many children in this borough never get brought to the library by their parents for a whole variety of reasons, either because of their working patterns, they're new to the country, new to the area, they've just got other priorities, or perhaps in the past, parental poor relationship with reading or learning, or actually the library's just at the moment not part of their routine. So we've been looking for a long time about what we could do to get to those children who would never get into the library, but also just to get a greater number of children reading, because we all know the research, we all know the prevention benefits of getting children reading from an early age, and we just really, really wanted to do something about that. So we started as early as 2017, when we first started to think, how do we work better with schools? And at that point, we went for a very paper-intensive process, working with individual schools. And at that point, we could still work on an opt-out basis, but lots of paper, lots of admin. But we had some initial successes, and we got 23 out of 70 primary schools engaged with all of those children joining up to the library, which was great. But straight after that first year, GDPR came in, and instantly our model went out the window, because we could no longer get people to opt out. We had to get everybody to opt in. And this brought a real degree of disparity to children who could take part, because now we were reliant on parents signing a letter that went back to school that said their children could take part. And of course, what happens is the most disadvantaged children are the people who don't get to take part. So we'd have schools coming into the library in the lead up to the summer holidays, and actually some of the children in the class would leave without joining the summer reading challenge, without being able to take books out. And we hated it. We just thought it was really, really awful. But we felt a little bit stuck. We weren't quite sure of the next way to go. And then we came across the Reading Agency's cross-authority pilot in 2021. And we took this as the opportunity to think, okay, how do we take everything we've done to the next step? So we went, and so our partners in that sense, schools have always been, as I said, was our target as a partner, but we spoke to our information governance team, and we spoke to our pupil services team, who held all the data. And we managed to get an agreement with our information governance team that we had a legitimate interest to get the data that the council held on school children, to be able to get them all joined up to the library service. And that was a really straightforward process, because they securely sent the information to us, and we securely sent the information to our library management system. Within about 10 minutes, we had 38,000 children joined up to the library service. So that first year, our process was, it was still very in the midst of COVID, and in that kind of, if we can all remember how we worked in very strange ways at that point. But we met virtually with head teachers. We told them what we were doing. So it wasn't a permission kind of thing. We said, we are doing this. We've got the authority from information governance to do this. We have the data. We're not asking you for anything, but we do want to work with you once we get all these library cards, and getting children signed up to the Summer Reading Challenge, and we'll work with your literacy coordinators. That first year, we did send a letter out to every parent, and we said, this is what we've done. If you want to opt out, you can. And that was just something that at that point, information governance felt, for that first initial go at this, that we should do. Out of all of those children, we got 2 inquiries, and when we spoke to the parents, they all agreed that the children could take part, so nobody opted out. And that first year, we had 400 class visits as a mixture of in-person, which again was very socially distanced and different, at the point that practically nobody else was in the library, but we could get school classes in, and a large number of children attending through online. And the children who visited the library would take the first 2 books from us, or they could take the first 2 books from their school library. And we offered to take books to schools that didn't have school libraries. Our model since then is, so for the Summer Reading Challenge, is because we've got all these children joined to the library service, so we join every primary age child to the Summer Reading Challenge, and that's either through a school visit or by us delivering the resources to school, and school starting the children off with their first 2 books. Throughout June and July every year, we have hundreds of class visits, thousands of children coming into the library. So we start our class visits straight after the half-term holidays, and we go right through until like the last week of the school term. We use online booking system for that, so that it's just really easy for class teachers to look at the slots that are available in the libraries, and to book their children in. And one of the things that we know about this is that children, so our stats show quite clearly that children are more likely to finish the challenge if they come on a school visit. If they take part initially through school, then they are less likely to finish the challenge. But what that does enable us to do is to then look at those skills each year and say, okay, these are the skills with the least number of finishers. How do we better engage that skill to get those completion rates increased and get children more engaged with the challenge? And then at the end of the summer holidays, we invite schools back in September, and that's to help children who have not been brought into the library over the summer, or have been brought in infrequently by their parents, to be able to complete the challenge. So what we have done over the last 3 years is now have a really embedded and streamlined process. We've taken away a lot of the admin of what was running the Summer Reading Challenge away from the front line, and our frontline staff are now able to spend their time engaging with the children, talking about books, listening to the children talk about the books that they've read, recommend things to be able to put on we run a children's cultural program across the summer, usually tied into the theme of Summer Reading Challenge, and to encourage children to be coming into the library regularly. So we're sort of turning it from that process driven to that improving children's lives for the frontline staff. Pupil services continue to send us the in-year joiners. So Newham's a borough where children move about a lot. So we have to keep up to date with those children as they move around. And they also send us the Rising Fives data every year. So we keep up to date with the primary school children in the borough. We know at a stage with teachers, parents, library teams, we know what we're doing. It's quite a slick process now. Considering that we're looking at 38,000 children, and as I guess I should say, as an authority with only 10 libraries, that's actually quite a large number for 10 libraries. We link into the HAF programme, because the great thing is that obviously all of the children who are taking part in the HAF programme are already signed up to the Summer Reading Challenge, so we can link in terms of library visits, and encouraging the children to keep reading, and we don't guesstimate resources anymore. So from a finance point of view, we just know what we're ordering at the start of the when we put our order forms in. But I think the most important thing is we know that some of these children will only ever come to the library with skill, and therefore we're targeting some of our most vulnerable and needy children. But also conversely to that, we also know that we've got children who, by being introduced to the library through school, then bring in their whole family, and their whole family are introduced to our amazing resources, and the rest of the family join up. So it's a really good way of introducing people into the library. And I'd say that from a corporate perspective, people do understand that what we're doing is ambitious. They do understand it's a bit special, and we are really trying to do something important for the children of Newham. So as I said, what we have is a year-round engagement with skills. And we always say, as maybe it's a little bit corny, but we see the Summer Reading Challenge as our Christmas moment. So it's explained in the terms of, you know, the Summer Reading Challenge is to libraries what Christmas is to Lego. You know, it's our big highlight in the year. It's a point where we can engage. It's a really good advocacy tool to just get children and their families into libraries and excited about reading. But we make sure that we back it up by continuing that year-round engagement with schools. So some of our headlines, so we have 89% of children between the age of 4 and 11 taking part in the Summer Reading Challenge. And I think more telling is the fact that 20 times the amount of primary age children actively use libraries in the 0 to 4s. 0 to 4s have been much harder for us. They're in a variety of different settings. It's much harder to get to them. But we can see that when we do engage with schools in the way we do, that we are getting far more children actively engaged in library services. A quarter of all our annual book issues are children's books that are issued between July and September. So that is huge. We're now doing about 950 class visits a year across those 10 libraries. And I think I saw in the chat earlier, somebody asking about how did some of these services perform before. So when I got to Newham, we were outed by the lovely Tim Coates as being in the top, well, he said we were in the bottom 10 libraries in the country for book issues per thousand of the population. Thanks to SIT for being a year out of date, we were actually bottom. But what we've done since between 2017 and now is that we're now the third highest authority in London for issuing of books, which has been fantastic. Our book issues have been higher than our pre-COVID book issues since 2021 to 22. We also know, because we run surveys with our residents, we know that 96% of residents say that they feel better after attending events in the library. So if we compare that to all those children coming into the library over the summer holidays, it's amazing. And we also know that we have more children finishing the challenge in 2023 than started it in 2017, which I think is a very special statistic. So I'd like to stop there, and I believe I'm handing over to my colleague Emma.
Hiya, I'm Emma from South Gloucestershire Libraries. I'm in complete assembly mode at the moment, so you're going to have to excuse me if I get a little bit carried away when I start weaving around all my Summer Reading Challenge resources and talking about this. So South Gloucestershire is a relatively small library authority. We've got 12 main libraries and then some very small community libraries. It's a very mixed area, so we've got some towns and we've got some rural, but it doesn't really have a centre or a main library in South Gloucestershire, but we're sort of closest to Bristol. So in South Gloucestershire, what we did was we combined the Summer Reading Challenge with a project called My Library Card. So we had a library card initiative, and how it worked in practice was that in June and July, in the run-up to the Summer Reading Challenge, all children were given, in reception, were given a library card. We'd get the cards out to them through class visit, author visits and different activities. And we visited nearly every single school in South Gloucestershire, which is just over 100 schools, for assemblies to tell children about the Summer Reading Challenge and get them and their new library cards and get the message out. And then in the autumn, we did the same, but for the Year 6 children. Again, we had author visits appropriate for their age group. And we did these two age groups because these were the main transition points, sort of starting school and then moving up to secondary school. Some sort of practical things that we needed to have in place to make this work. And the first thing was partnerships, because we could not have done this as a library service on our own. And the first partnership we got into place was with the council's education improvement team, which gave us access to the funding. And I noticed in the chat someone said, "How did you fund this?" Well, actually, that's how we funded it. It wasn't library funding. We got additional funding from within the education departments in the council, which has funded the Summer Reading Challenge and the activities over this period. So it's been excellent from that point of view as well. It gave us access to funding, but it also gave us access to the pupil data, because an important thing about the library cards, which I have one here, but the important thing about them is they are live on the system. And when the children get them, they will have their names printed on them, which was very important for the children. They've all that printed on, and they work straight away. So it got rid of all those barriers of actually having to join up. So being able to get that data from the education team was really important as well, and getting permission to use that data. And that's why I have to say thank you to Newham Libraries, because they went before us and we were able to say, well, look, other library authorities are doing this, so it must be possible, it can be done, so we can do it. And we have got all our documents on our website, and I'll put our web address in the chat. But if anybody else is interested in how we got the data and what we had to do for that, all the things like the data sharing agreements and the privacy notices, they're all there on our website if anyone else wants to look at them, because it might be, that was a big stumbling block for us to get over. So before I sort of go on to talk about any more of the partnerships, there was a really important thing that we needed to have in place, because at the moment this is just like a bit of plastic, and what does it mean? And that was the whole library service. We had to get them involved so that when me or my colleagues are going out to talk about the summer reading challenge at the assemblies, the experience that the children had when they visited the libraries matched that. So it was really important that everybody was on board with that. So in South Gloucestershire, we have a children's panel who are involved. It's got a library assistant from every single library, and we're all involved. We start every September planning the Summer Reading Challenge and this project, so everybody feels it's sort of part of them and is important to them. So the one thing that has been really key to the Summer Reading Challenge working this way is the connection with schools and visiting the schools. We found over 60% of the children who join the Summer Reading Challenge do so because they heard about it at school, and the next sort of highest number, why did you do it? It's because they've done it before. So we have to keep visiting the schools. That was really, really important. We go into the schools, we show the children all the materials, we show them the library cards, and what has been really, really popular, and I hope you can see it clearly here, but we do craft bags every year. We started them in COVID, and it has been a complete game changer. Every year it's a different theme. This year, because it's Marvelous Makers, we've got an easel, and then we are challenging all the children to do their own designs on the bags of them. I have a dragon blowing bubbles, reading books, and I'm expecting all the children to do better than me at this. But we show them all this, and it's a really simple thing, but for us, it has really helped us engage a lot more children. So because we knew that the assembly visits worked really well, we've been doing a lot of class visits, very similar to Newham, getting the children in. Then they have their library card, they can borrow books at the class visit, and they learn, because if you're on reception, what does having library membership mean? What does the Summer Reading Challenge mean? They come in on a class visit and we can introduce a whole new world to them. And we felt that these class visits are really, really important, because it meant that children whose parents and carers, they can't take them to the library, or for whatever reason they're not coming to the library, but at least those children then get to join in and don't miss out. And that we felt was, again, it's very similar to you, and we felt that was really, really important. And we had a lot, turned out the children were very, very good advocates for the library service, and we had a lot of anecdotal evidence then that the children were dragging their parents in because they'd had a good library visit, and we've had whole families join on the back of that. So the school visits have been really, really important. The impact of working with the schools in So Intense is it's really helped us raise the profile of libraries and the consciousness of schools. We'd always done assembly visits, but now schools ask us. We have to do a lot less chasing. We have demand for more class visits than we could manage now, whereas before we used to have to go and sell the library service. Now they want to come in, and they're asking us, which is fantastic. And it's meant that we've been seen as a valuable partner by other organisations, because we can make things happen. So more and more people are coming to us rather than us having to go to them. We've had some great partnerships with the half providers. I had an email this morning, which I was delighted at. One person who I was going, can we, I want to come back and work with you again. They're like, yes, we've already looked at the theme for the challenge. We're theming a week around it. And this is before we've even met up to book it in. So it really has sort of helped embed us in lots of other people's worlds, not just our own. The overall impact of it, because it's quite hard to separate all the different things out, the summer reading challenge and the library card, all the class visits, all the assembly visits, the bags that we do, it's all sort of come together. But what we can say is that the attendance, we're comparing ourselves to 2019 because that's sort of before COVID and before things all went awry. Our attendance at children's activities is up 12%, but even better, our book borrowed by children is up 20% from pre-COVID levels. And that, at the end of the day, is what we want, more children to be borrowing more books out of the library. And it has done that. And what it's also doing is helping make it a very regular thing for the libraries, because we follow this sort of very similar again to New. We have the same pattern throughout the year. June, July, you get your reception card, then you have the summer reading challenge, then it's your year sixes, and the visits go. And every holiday we do an activity, we have a craft bag. And we're getting more and more people in the habit of, well, what do you do at the holidays? You go to the library. There's always something on. There's always the activity. This is what happens. So more and more people are asking us, oh, what are you doing this holiday? Rather than us having to convince them that you would really like to come to us. So the overall effect of increasing issues for children by 20% is, we're delighted with that. We've got funding for this project for this year and next year, and by that point we will have come to the end of that sort of stage of it, and all the children in South Gloucestershire will have their own library card. And then after that, our aim is to make it just the norm. This is what happens when you go to school, when you're in reception, you will get, every summer you will get a library card. So we just want to keep going, so it just becomes a regular part of what it means to start school in South Gloucestershire. Sorry, I've gone very, very quickly then. I've seen some questions come through, but thank you.
I'm just going to jump in. I'm conscious of time and just say, maybe if the questions are directed to either you, Emma, or Caroline, if you could maybe just answer them in the chat, that would be really brilliant, and then we'll gather them together at the end of the quick Q&A. Sorry, Debbie, I'll hand over to you, but thank you very much for that.
I think I'll jump in now. The third Emma on the call. So hello everyone. I think I know lots of you on here, but for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Emma Braithwaite. I'm Head of Skills and Engagement at the Reading Agency. I'm going to be really, really quick because I know there's lots of questions that people want to ask. So I'm sort of looking ahead to the future a little bit. So as we've heard across the last 3 years, 1 in 5 English library authorities have trialled this new style of delivery for the challenge. And they've used the overarching principles of the cross-authority model and then adapted them to suit their local setting, bringing in additional resource and funding from a variety of local authority partners to really extend that reach and deepen engagement. And as we've heard, that's looked a little bit different for every place that's taken part. Sometimes that's been half providers. Initially, it was COVID recovery fund, things like that, but often from education, public health, and those sorts of areas. So the Reading Agency has helped and supported along the way, providing a case for support, opportunities to share good practice within the sector, and to promote the impact and the value of the approach more widely. So together, we've proven that this approach works. So we feel that it's time to move forward from that pilot phase and embed the cross-authority model as the best practice way of delivering the Summer Reading Challenge. And we want every library authority to be able to benefit from this way of working and improve upon the already really impressive work that's happening with children through the summer. So with this in mind, the Reading Agency has developed a suite of resources to support library partners, and these can be accessed on the Reading Agency website, but we'll also provide links after the session. So firstly, there's a really handy toolkit that sets out some of those really key questions and actions to consider with your team for how you will plan to adapt your current way of working. And what I would say is as I'm sure lots of you will be conscious of, now is the time to have those conversations for Summer Reading Challenge 2025. Starting to get those meetings in the diary with local authority colleagues, as we know that those conversations can take a while to get going and to bear fruit. You know, in an ideal scenario, partnerships and any additional funding would be agreed ahead of the materials order deadline that we have in January, particularly if you want to order additional materials or slightly different things. So we have a case for support available, which you can adapt for your local stakeholders. So that contains all kinds of different things that you can pick and choose from, whichever's most relevant for you. It contains an evidence of need overview, a list of key local authority priorities that the Summer Reading Challenge supports, particularly around sort of education and health and well-being, as well as those specific costings for that £1 per child messaging that Debbie mentioned earlier, and you might have seen in some of our previous sessions. That's proven to be a really powerful message for local authorities. You can obviously access this latest report, which contains the findings from the 3-year pilot that Karina took us through. And in there, there's also really useful case studies from lots of different library authorities that did automatic library membership, universal approaches, targeted approaches. So lots of sort of real world examples in there. The report is accompanied by a blog on our website, which distills the top line stats into a really easy to digest format. So I always think it's a really nice opener to send to new partners. It's sort of fairly light touch and kind of introduces the concept of the challenge and the pilot. So that's a really useful thing to use as well. So in terms of our ongoing support, the Reading Agency will continue our advocacy work for the programme and for the work of public libraries in our conversations with national and local government, including our upcoming Westminster engagement event, which is on the 6th of November this year, where we might have lots of new MPs who are keen to hear about the work that we do. We'll also be launching monthly online drop-in sessions for libraries delivering Summer Reading Challenge and thinking of adopting aspects of the cross-authority model. So members of the Summer Reading Challenge team, along with colleagues from research and evaluation and marketing and comms, as well as peers from the sector, will be on hand to answer your questions or provide advice and support. And it will also be an opportunity for you to give us your feedback on the programme and to speak with library colleagues from across the country. Some of you may remember that we ran something similar through the pilot, and we know that peer support proved really valuable in helping tackle local issues by drawing on the experience of others who had faced and overcome similar things. So the sessions will launch next month, and we'll be sending dates and the Teams link and everything out in the next coordinator newsletter, but we can send those to all of the attendees here, as I'm conscious we might have some people who are not Summer Reading Challenge coordinators. So I know we're going to have a Q&A session in just a second, but just to say, you're always really welcome to get in touch with our team at the Reading Agency. You can come via the Summer Reading Challenge inbox, which I'm sure lots of you are familiar with, but it's summerreadingchallenge@readingagency.org.uk, or you can always get in touch via Libraries Connected and ASCEL as well, who we work really closely with. But that's all from me. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Emma. Just to introduce myself, everyone, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lucy Banks and I am Programme Manager for ASCEL. I'm very happy to be here today and to read so many questions. We've had lots in the chat, so let's see how many we can get through in the next 10 minutes. So this first question, Karina, I think might be for you. And in fact, there's been a few around this. Christina from Somerset has asked, what was the impact on library footfall figures and total children's book loans for those pilot libraries compared to traditional delivery model?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't have footfall data, so I can't speak to that one for looking at the pilot as a whole. In terms of book issues, we on one of the slides that I had talked about there, over the 3 years, 23% of book issues came from pilot areas versus 77% from non-pilot areas. Of course, that's obviously there were more non-pilots, but that's compared to 14% delivering. But just looking at, for example, 2023 compared to 2022, of those same authorities who were involved in either the pilot in 2023 or not the pilot in 2023, pilot areas increased their book issues by 46% on the previous year, on 2022, and non-pilot areas, so areas doing traditional delivery, increased it, but only by 6%. So a much higher increase in those pilot areas.
Lovely, thank you, Karina. We've also had a few questions in about funding. So Joe has asked, how do authorities fund a Universal Summer Reading Challenge? I know Emma and Caroline touched upon that in their talks that they did, but Emma B, I don't know if you've got any sort of general comments on funding.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a wide range of things. So every library authority did things a little bit differently. In the early stages of when we were sort of kicking this off, lots of people were tapping into COVID recovery funds, and we were able to support libraries in showing how the Summer Reading Challenge and what the library had to offer was ticking lots of boxes for local authorities in terms of that COVID recovery for children's education and well-being. But as we've seen, it's sometimes through HAF providers, the education department, public health, and I think being able to make that case with that evidence of need has been able to sort of access that. And the £1 per child model that we came up with, which covers the sort of essentials that you need for a child to take part. I appreciate that lots of authorities buy lots of additional things to go with the challenge, but we costed it so you know it's a core pack, a few incentives, and a certificate for a child as the real essentials. And we found, and our library partners found, that sending that message to the head of the council or whoever their education colleagues, that was a really powerful message to say that from about £1 a child, you can be delivering all of these benefits for children. So that's you know, a few examples, but I know Emma and Caroline sort of had slightly different ways of funding this.
Thank you, Emma. I'm going to move on past a few questions that have been answered in the chat. Karen's asked, do you both have large dedicated teams specifically for Summer Reading Challenge? Caroline or Emma?
I wish, I think, would be the answer to that one. There's me, and I'm very, very fortunate. I probably because I've been in this role for quite a while. I've spent an awful lot of time advocating for children's library services within the library service itself. So I got agreement, like say, to have the children's panel where they deem it important enough to pull out a member of staff from the library to take part in this. And I spend, I think I must be successful in this, but a lot of time with libraries, making them feel that Summer Reading Challenge is theirs, and they want to do it, and they want to do it well. So for the school assembly visits, there's like 100 schools. I'll maybe do 10 of those, and library staff of different levels from all across the library will do the rest of them in their local area. And we felt that it works better because they recognize that person from the library, and they go, oh, you came into our school, and all of that kind of thing. But it's quite a lot. It's a big commitment for the library service, and it takes a lot of time supporting that as well and getting people to come on board with it. But over the years, I don't know, somehow we've managed to build up enough support within the library service itself that it's seen as important enough, and we can cover it enough, and libraries take a real sort of sense and pride and ownership in it, because otherwise it's me, and I can't do 100 schools. So yeah.
Thank you, Emma, for that insight. Caroline, did you have anything to add?
No, we're very similar. We've got one member of staff who leads on it, and then other members of staff who come in when it's like their area. So somebody in systems helps when we're uploading data to the LMS and things like that. But yeah, it's on the front line. They have to deliver all of the class visits and run it in their sites. We are this year, we've put some money aside as a prize for the kind of winning library, because we haven't got those incentives about how many children to join anymore to it. So we're looking more around, you know, how welcoming does the library look? How have they managed to dress it for the occasion? How many children do they get to finish? How many actual class visits do they get in, and things like that, as a bit of an incentive. And they get some hard cash at the end of it, not for themselves, obviously, because we're local authority, but they get to spend it on the library if they do well.
Great, thank you, Caroline. Emma F, I think this one might be for you. Do you focus on reception for the class visits because they're receiving the new library cards? How do you engage other year groups in the challenge?
Yes, we do focus on reception for the school library cards because they're getting the school library cards. And then for the other years, it's mainly through the assembly visits. But what has happened, because that's just as of the June, July time, but because the schools are getting very used to this now, we get schools asking us, can they bring in their all their classes? So so throughout the rest of the years, we will be doing class visits for all the other age groups. We just focus on the reception in the June, July time when they get their new card.
Thank you, Emma. Just seeing the questions that haven't been picked up yet. So this one you have actually answered, Caroline, but it might be worth asking Emma too. You were asked how many schools are located in Newham and which staff are doing the school visits. And just to share what you responded there, we have approximately 70 primary schools. Frontline team members run the SRC class visits. Is that the same with you, Emma, in your area?
Yeah, we've got just over 100 schools, and again, it's as I say, I'll do about 10 visits, and the rest will be done by the local library teams.
Lovely, thank you. And do any of the libraries involved in this pilot also have self-operated libraries as part of their operating model? If so, how does the challenge work with this? So Caroline, you've already responded with we don't. Emma, do you have self-operated libraries?
I think, does that mean the open access, or I don't know, self-service? We don't run the summary challenge. Well, people can come in, obviously, in self-service, but we don't. They would need to come in during staffed opening hours for the summer reading challenge, because we felt that we didn't just want it, that the interaction with the staff and the volunteers and the talk about books is really, really important. So we didn't just want it to be, oh, you just come and get stickers and stuff like that.
Lovely, thank you.
Just to answer from the pilot as a whole, so in terms of I see that's coming about also community libraries. So yes, some of the pilot areas did include community libraries, and we know that, and you know, can look at that data separately if that's something that's interesting to you. Self-operated libraries, that's not something that we've asked about, but is something, so we don't have the data on that in the pilot as a whole, but is something very interesting for us to look into.
Thanks, Karina. I'm acutely aware of time, so I think we might have time for one or two more questions. Lindsay from North Tyneside asks, do you not find that you have a lot more wastage if children are signed up automatically but then don't bother to complete the challenge? Emma or Caroline, what were your experiences with that?
I guess from my perspective, we've always had children who've walked into the library and they've got SRC resources and walked out and maybe did one book or never come back. I think that's always happened. I think with this way, all of the children, so the thousands of children who come into a class visit are all taking away 2 books to read. And the ones who are doing it at school, we've got an agreement with school that they're reading 2 books within school time that will go towards it. But I think sometimes I always think we have to get away, although it's nice and we celebrate the completion figures, actually a child reading 1 book could be just as important as a child who reads 6, 10 books. And a lot of the summer reading challenge, it's your advocacy moment. It's how you sell the library service. And as marketing campaigns go, I think it's really quite a cheap one. And we can just really get a bit of excitement across. So I'm not at all concerned about children who don't finish it or who only read 1 book.
Thank you, Caroline. I think that's a really good point about marketing and advocacy. Sorry, Emma.
No, so very similar to Caroline. We kind of know-ish. We get people who start and finish, or start and do very little. But like Caroline said, I don't feel like I'm there to judge. They've come in the library, they've borrowed books and they're doing reading they wouldn't have otherwise have done. I just think that's a result, and we just order resources accordingly, really. And I think, like I said, relatively, it's as a marketing campaign, we get a lot out of it. So
just to add to that, Lucy, from the reading agency perspective as well, we've definitely softened our language around the number of books over the last few years. So you'll notice on the official materials, we don't refer to six books anymore. We still have it as a recommendation here and there, but the feedback we get a lot from our library partners is that, yeah, you might have a child who's never wanted to read anything before, and actually reading one or two is a massive achievement. And so that is up to the discretion of the library staff to look at the child in front of them and sort of adapt it. So we've definitely and trying not to focus too much on those completer numbers. I mean, we sort of we record them, and it's really interesting to see that, but what completion means can be different depending on those children, definitely.
Thank you, Emma. I believe we've run out of time, have we, Sarah?
I think
I'll
we
pass
have.
back to you.
Just gone over, so just have to stop there. I'm really sorry to those of you whose questions we haven't answered. I might try and capture or get Emma to capture the questions, and if there are any others that we haven't answered, even in generic terms, then maybe we could get answers and send those out with the recording of this webinar. So I just wanted to say thank you to every Emma and to Debbie and to Karina, and also to Caroline, because it's been really interesting. It's been fascinating just hearing about the project in a bit more detail. And also thank you to all those amazing questions, because I think they're really, really insightful questions that really help us develop the project. I think, obviously funding is a great issue, and having those advocacy tools is really, really important. I just loved when you said Summer Reading Challenge is our Christmas moment. I thought it was really, really lovely. And also when you said, well, other library authorities are doing it, so it must be possible. I think that's a great mantra to go away with. It must be possible. So and also I think the useful stuff around data sharing is really powerful too, because I think that's always it's always a kind of either perceived or real barrier to any of these things taking place. So to find ways of overcoming that is really, really helpful. So just again to say a big thank you. Also to remind you, there is another webinar coming up on the 8th of July, which is around the BBC's 500 words competition. The aim of that one is to both recruit more judges, but also to think about how libraries can get involved in helping children write their stories. And we're thinking about how you can have story starters on class visits, and how the library can stimulate some of those stories. Also hoping to have a recording of Colin Firth reading one of the winning stories from last year. So if you like enjoying Colin Firth in action, then do come along for that. So it'll be a really interesting webinar too, and about writing. And I know writing, the corollary of reading, is something that's a concern at the moment, and creative writing. So I think libraries have a role to play in that. So do come along if you haven't booked onto that one already. But just to say again, a huge thank you for today. It's really nice to do this just before the start of the Summer Reading Challenge. Looking forward to a really successful Summer Reading Challenge this year. So thank you very much, and do enjoy the rest of the day. And if you've still got sunshine, enjoy it while you may. So thank you.